Hey there, welcome to today's episode, and as you can see we are diving in with the MPC One Plus. I just want to make a bit of a beat sketch like I usually do. Very quickly as well, we are getting stems for the MPC. I'm sure if you're interested in MPCs, you've seen videos. Very exciting stuff, looks really good. And of course, whenever that arrives, I'll purchase it and do some videos on that when it comes. But today, yeah, let's make a beat on the MPC One. Let's start as we always do by just calling this a loop. First track that we're going to make, I'm going to say is going to be for drums, so I'm going to label it as drums. Now, I have just released a new sample pack, and this might be a good chance to go in and kind of deep dive on that a little bit. I don't really do that much. So if we go to sample packs and open this up, Forms is my latest one, and I always make a short demonstration video for my website, so anyone thinking about buying them can check out the sounds that are in here. But let's use that to actually make a song, and I'll show you kind of what I intend these sample packs for. If we open up Forms, you can see we have our subcategories in here. Now, don't get me wrong, you can do whatever you like with a sample pack, but when I make them and I put drum breaks in and melodic loops, I think the most fun thing is to slice them up and just do something completely different with them. Of course, you can just run them as loops, and I always give the correct information. So we take a look at drum breaks here. I'll give you the BPM and the bar length, everything that you need to just run this as a loop, because they sound like nice drum loops. But I think it is more fun to treat them like found breaks and slice them up. So let's do that. Let's just scroll through and choose one of these. Okay, kind of like the sound of that one here. This one's called the Fear Break. Really slow, 64 BPM, 4 bars. Nice kind of atmospheric sound to it. What we'll do is we will load that onto our pad here. Or we can simply just load it in. Maybe we should just do that because we're going to create a new drum group anyway. I can click load without anything selected. It's gone into the sample pool. And from the sample pool, I can edit it here and begin to chop it up. So if we open it up, we can take a look at that loop. And as I press these pads, so I'm going to check the overall volume here. You can hear that drum loop playing around. Now, when we chop things up, we can scoot over into chop mode rather than trim mode. And if we do by the threshold here, and give it a second, you'll notice with the sort of 50 threshold mark set, we can adjust this. It's slicing it down to probably almost every individual drum hit. So I'm assuming we got like a kick drum, hi-hat, and then like a snare. So that's cool if you want to just, you know, you could change the tempo, you could mess around with it, do something different. But what's kind of nice is if you actually swap it over to regions, and you can play around with this depending on the bar length, but 16 slices here for a 4-bar loop will work out pretty well. And what that is giving us, of course, is multiple drum hits per slice. So rather than narrowing it right the way down to individual hits, it gives us a couple. So on this first slice here, I'm assuming we've got our kick drum, one of the hi-hats. So when we get the snare drum, we get the same thing. And with those extra drum sounds included, if we just start playing those to like a new BPM, you can get some interesting kind of broken sort of rhythms. What we'll do, we'll make these into a group now. So we'll do, or a new drum program. We're going to do Shift, Convert, and do this to a new drum program with non-destructive slices. When we go back to main here with our drums track, we're going to select the drum program that we want, and it's going to be titled for the sample that we chopped up. So here it's Fear Break. And now we have these chops. They're already in a mute group. And we're getting those extra little drum hits. Now, we're currently set to record at 75. I think I want to do something slow, so I'm going to go down to, I don't know, say 71 BPM. For now, I'm just going to set this at 1 bar to record in, and we'll just wing it. Let's just see what happens. We're going to do record here, play start. We get this weird, like, broken kind of loop, but I kind of like that. So, of course, we're chopping 64 and then making it fit to 71. And it's a similar technique that I use when I'm doing my sample chops. I'm really not looking for loops a lot of the time, or even bits of melody that I have to try and work out the timing of. I just like slicing it and then somehow squeezing that to fit whatever we're working with. And I've started doing that more and more with drums as well, because I think you just get these weird, interesting, broken rhythms. It becomes even more strange because we are using timing correction to snap to 16 notes throughout our grid. So it pulls it and it makes it a little bit kind of awkward. But because of those extra notes inside of the slices, you get these unusual results. So what we're going to do I'm going to go to edit here on the sequence, and I'm going to double the length so that I've got 2 bars to work with for now. I think that'll just be a little bit longer, of course. So we've now made our first track, and now we can create a new track, and I'm going to call this one Chops. And now we need to find a sample to chop up. Now I can put it into a program, but because we're going to create a program anyway once we've sliced it up, I'm not going to worry about that for now. We're just going to go straight to browse here, go into the browsing tab, come up a level so that we can go back into this sample pack, and let's find a melodic loop or something that's going to work well with this. And I quite like this one here. What I don't want is any pad selected, because if I try and load this just into the sample pool, but I've selected a pad, it's going to load it into that program and overwrite it. So I'm just going to make sure that is deselected. And now when we hit load, we've loaded the sample, but it's only gone into the sample pool. It's in here, ready to be assigned somewhere else. So if we go to sample edit, this is still on the fear break, but we can change that at the top, and we can find the Lotus Falls. That's what this particular loop composition is called. I'm going to go straight into chopping mode and slice this up. We can begin chopping just simply by pressing a pad and then hitting the next part where we want to slice. And just threw a random one in at the end there. Now I missed a couple of spots here. Ideally on this particular slice, this number 8, I'd like that to be over there a little bit. So I'm just going to nudge that along. And I'm going to do shift and 0 snapping here, so that as I just start tweaking these start points, we can just eliminate any weird clicks and pops that we don't want. So I can hear it a little bit there. I'm going to be using my cue links for this. What we need to do, of course, is create, let's do shift and convert. And we're going to create a new drum program, non-destructive slices, and do that. Now when we go back here, we know that we've got our chops track with the associated drum program. Now when we switch between the tracks, we'll see drums is linked to Fear Break, and this track chops is linked to Lotus 4. So we know we're all set up and good to go. The first thing I'm going to do though, while we're on chops, is go into program edit. And as always, I like to pitch my samples either up or down. And just pitching it down by -2 sounds pretty good to me. So I'm going to do record here, play start. Yeah, so we're getting there. It's something there that I like, that it's a good foundation to kind of base things on, but we need to have a little look at a few things. First thing I'll do is go into track mix, and I will solo just the chops for a second. I think what it needs is an extra note in here, and I think that's actually what I want for this first section here. I want this little note that we created, this little slice. I actually want that to be the slice that I want to use here, where it's kind of missing a little bit. So if we do nudge, we can just send this guy over. And here I actually want the repetition of a note. So I'm wondering if I can just do that and just record it in. But if we go into program edit and we go into samples here, maybe we should just extend the end point of that sample and see what happens. You know what, that's good enough. So that sounds pretty good to me. Obviously, we're not mixing and messing around with volumes and stuff just now, but that kind of works as an idea for me. So with our sequence, I'm going to copy this sequence and click do it. We now have sequence 2, which is an exact copy of sequence 1. With sequence 1, we can just mute out the drums here. so that this could be the intro to the song. So it could play like this for the 2 bars. We could extend it to 4, whatever we want to do. So we've now built 2 sequences. So now we've got those. It might be cool to do exactly the same thing again and create a new sequence, which is going to be a copy again. And as loop 2 begins, maybe we want to try and add in some kind of bass line. So we need to create a new track, and we'll call this bass because that's what we're going to have next. We need some kind of program that we're going to use. I'm going to select a new program, choose key group as the type. So we can name this now as bass. We'll call it baseline so that it's different from bass. And now what we need to do is we need to load a sample in. So we're going to go back. I'm going to go to C shots where I've got these C note tuned instruments and find a bass sound. And I'm sure I put a couple in here. I think there's this buddy bass, and then I put in like a distorted bass as well somewhere. Yeah, you got this like heavy grungier bass. I think actually this one's going to work. So I'm going to load that to the bottom left pad. Then when we go back to main, we're in the key group, so we can... Here I'm going to add an effect so that I can just run some of the high end out of this. And I'm just going to use a filter. Got the air filter, and using the cutoff at the top here. I'm going to run a bunch of the high end out for now, see if it fits better with the sample. Start again. Sounds a little bit better. I still think there's too much in terms of the high end in here. I'm going to open up the filter again. Just want that to kind of duck out of the way a little bit. Something like that. Bass is still not 100% right, but for now, we'll keep moving on. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to duplicate this again. Let's go back here and do copy the sequence. Click do it. Go back to main. So we're now working with another brand new sequence. On loop 3, I want to add another element in. So I'm going to add a new track, and I'm also going to add another type of program here. I think maybe we'll do another key group program this time. So I'm going to click this, and then we can call this, I don't know, let's just call this melody for now until we've picked out. I don't know what kind of sample I want. And let's browse inside of here again. So we're still working inside of this C shots folder. I'm going to play the sample as it's coming through, like the loop, so that I can just listen to these while it's going. And maybe this gramophone vibes works for us, so we'll load that in onto a new pad down the bottom left here. Come back to main. And again, I can use the MIDI keyboard. When I was playing the bass line, it was kind of okay to just have that a little bit sort of short, and I just held my fingers on the keys here. But for this one, I'm going to go into program edit. I'm going to go to envelope, but I want to play around with the release essentially. So where we got our amp envelope, I'm going to shift this release up to about 100. Now we can play this over. And a big problem with it at the moment, it sounds a little dry, so let's add some effects in here. I'm going to start with a little reverb. Let's try reverb large. Sounds better. Then still with the effects here, let's maybe filter it a little bit. Let's add a filter. So we'll add the air filter. And again, just using the cutoff. And finally, let's add a little delay to just give it a little bit more interest. Gonna change this to 8th notes. Good enough. Let's just record that in. I'm just going to grab this note, use nudge, don't snap, and just shift this back a little bit. Just using automation here, I'm going to select these 2 high notes at the end and just play around with the velocity. I don't want them to be quite so strong, so I'm just going to reduce that down. Okay, so we've built up a little melodic loop. Still staying with this particular sequence, I think what I want to do is put in another track here and we'll browse for yet another sample. But this time I think we'll add like a little effect or something like that. So what we'll do here is we'll add a new drum program and we'll call this effects here on this particular track. Now let's browse. We're going to come up and there is a folder with effects sounds in here. So let's add some of those. Again, I'm going to play the loop around so that I can listen to the samples as we're, listening to the beat. So that Echo Boy effects works pretty well. I'm going to load that onto the first pad and I might try and choose 2 of these at least. So let's look for another one that works. I think this Stab Master effects will work if we tweak it a little bit. So we're going to load that onto the second pad. I'm going to do Shift and Pad Mix. I'm going to reduce the volume of these down because that is really loud. And if we go into Program Edit here, go to Samples, choose this high-pitched noise here. I'm just going to run the start point off a little bit. And I think what we can do is we can record those in. I've got a feeling this kind of percussive sound I want to have at the very beginning of the loop. So let's record that in first. And then I think for the second one here, this noise, I might try tweaking the pitch on that one. So again, in Program Edit, we can change this on the pitch. So now let's record that in. We'll do overdub this time. So what else does this last sequence need here to kind of flesh it out a little bit more? Maybe some extra like percussive sounds might work and maybe like a little vocal. So we'll put all of those in. Let's go to browse here. I can maybe take a listen to some of these other drum breaks and see if there's something that I can pull out of there. I was trying to use mostly this sample pack. So let's take a quick look at the drum breaks again. Now with this Dark Lord break here, maybe we can pull out some of the hi-hats or something and just make some extra like percussive sounds. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to load this one into the sample pool and then we're going to go to Sample Edit and up here we're going to look for that drum loop. So this is our Dark Lord break here. We can go into trim because we're just going to trim out maybe like a piece of it. Quite like this little hi-hat sound. Let's just zoom in on that and we can zoom in a bit closer. So we're just taking this little hat sound. I'm going to create another track, so let's just call this Perks, will do. Now it's going to need some effects to make it interesting, so let's add in like a little delay, I think. I think what we'll do with the mix is we'll bring the mix down. And I'm going to up the feedback. And I think we'll switch up the timing of this, just make it faster. So what I'll do is I'll record that in as well. To make it more interesting, let's maybe add a little automation and like filter this a little bit as it plays through. So we can go back and we can add another effect in here because we added some delay. Let's add a filter. Make sure automation is set to on. As this is now playing and recording, I can change the cutoff frequency and record that in. So we're going to do overdub. Might need to tidy that up a little bit, but it works. Just gives it more detail, kind of breathes a little bit as the filter is like automated through. I think finally to finish this off, what we'll do is we'll add one more track here and we'll call this vocal of some sort. And we can browse for one of those. Now, that's the only one thing I didn't include in this particular sample pack was any vocal samples. So when I go to browse here, I'm going to choose one of those from somewhere else. Got some vocals in here. I'll just find something that we can use.
And it's like when you get into it, it's like just looking at reality on some. That's how I be.
I reckon there's something there we can use. So on the bottom left pad, let's load that in. And maybe I just want the little end part of that. So if we go into program edit, we can go into sample and just find the last little part there.
That's how it be.
In fact, actually, we can just add an effect while we're in here. So let's do an effect and let's add a delay. A diff delay, so it's got like the filter coming out.
That's how it be.
That's
how it be.
Okay, so I think that's going to do us for today. We've created multiple sequences. This is definitely a structure of a song. I could track this out to Ableton. I could link it up inside of here, just apply some compression and a few effects. But all I want to do today is just play out on the beat. I'll let this play through. We'll go through our sequences, build it up, and yeah, we'll go from there. So hope you've enjoyed it. Take care, and I'll see you in the next episode.
That's how it be. That's how it be. That's how it be.